It was a warm Saturday afternoon in Austin, Texas. The kind of day that felt like it was made for taking things slow. I had wrapped up a week of nonstop coding, and now I was sitting at my favorite local cafe, sipping on a dark roast and letting the world around me settle into the familiar hum of everyday life. Rachel, my wife, had texted earlier saying she would join me after finishing up some work at the office. She worked as a marketing manager at a retail company, a job that often kept her busy, but she always promised to make time for us. I didn't mind. It was something I'd gotten used to. She had a way of making everything a little more exciting, even if it meant she often ended up being the center of attention, whether she meant to or not. The cafe was buzzing with activity, people chatting, and the soft clink of coffee cups filling the air. I was content, zoning out in my own little world, until my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was Rachel. "Hey, I'm going to be a little late. I'm bringing a couple of people from the office with me. Hope that's okay." I smiled to myself. It wasn't a surprise. Rachel liked to keep things social, and she loved to bring people together. I wasn't exactly thrilled about more people joining us, but I figured it wouldn't be a big deal. It wasn't like I had any grand plans for the day anyway. I finished my coffee, sat back, and stared out the window, watching the world go by. And then I saw her. Rachel stood across the street outside a small photography studio, talking animatedly to her best friend, Megan. They were standing on the sidewalk, laughing, but there was something off about the scene. Megan was focused on her phone, scrolling through something, while Rachel was gesturing excitedly, her hands moving as if she were plotting something. Curiosity piqued, I stood up quietly, making my way toward them, hoping to stay unnoticed. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but something about their conversation felt different. More intense than usual. As I got closer, I could hear bits of their conversation. "You know, this is going to be perfect for Instagram. If we do this right, we'll get so many likes. People will talk about us for days," Rachel was saying, her voice dripping with excitement. Megan nodded, her gaze still fixed on her phone. "But you have to make it look real, Rachel. It has to be convincing." I stopped dead in my tracks. What were they talking about? Rachel's voice dropped, and I could barely make out the next words. "I'm going to do it. I'll act jealous, get Alex to flip out. Everyone will think we're on the verge of breaking up. It'll be perfect. I'll even make sure to post everything as it happens. The drama will go viral." I felt a wave of confusion and then frustration wash over me. Was she serious? I had always known that Rachel loved the spotlight. She thrived on attention, especially on social media. But this was different. This wasn't just posting a selfie or a cute picture of us on vacation. This was orchestrating a public breakdown for attention, manipulating our personal life for views and likes. I stood there for a moment, frozen. The coffee in my hand suddenly felt heavy, the warmth turning into an uncomfortable weight. My mind raced. What did I do now? How could I confront her about this without making things worse? Instead of reacting right away, I decided to keep my distance, hoping to learn more without drawing attention to myself. I needed to process what I had just overheard. I wasn't angry, not yet. But I couldn't deny the tight knot of betrayal that was beginning to form in my chest. Rachel had always been a little dramatic, sure. But this was something else. I stayed hidden for a few more minutes, watching as Rachel and Megan chatted more, their conversation turning to logistics, how to make sure the prank would get the maximum amount of attention, which hashtags to use, and when to post everything. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Rachel waved goodbye to Megan and started heading toward the cafe. She hadn't noticed me yet, which was just as well. I needed time to think. I took a deep breath, my thoughts racing. What was I supposed to do with this new information? Should I confront her now or wait? How much of this was really about her wanting attention, and how much of it was something deeper? I didn't know, but I was about to find out. Rachel walked in a few minutes later, her smile wide as she spotted me sitting by the window. "Sorry I'm late," she said, her voice bubbling with energy. "I brought Megan and some other friends from the office. I hope that's okay." I looked up at her, meeting her gaze. There was no sign that she knew I had overheard her conversation. She didn't look guilty at all. Instead, she was her usual self, charming, confident, and completely unaware that I now had a glimpse into a side of her I wasn't sure I recognized. "It's fine," I said, my voice steady, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I'm just glad you made it." But inside, everything was shifting. The dinner that night was supposed to be a casual, enjoyable evening, just the two of us. Well, that was the plan at least. Rachel and her friends had taken their time to get to the restaurant, and by the time they arrived, I had already settled into the booth, my mind still trying to process everything I had overheard earlier. But I couldn't help noticing how excited Rachel seemed, how effortlessly she moved through the crowd, greeting everyone as if she were the star of the show. I watched her with a quiet sense of detachment, the familiar warmth I had once felt for her now replaced with a gnawing feeling that I couldn't quite shake. "Hey Alex. You're sitting in my spot," Rachel teased, laughing as she slid into the booth beside me. Her laughter was light, carefree, but it didn't reach my ears the way it used to. It felt off, almost like a performance. I forced a smile, pretending to be unaffected. "Sorry, didn't realize I was sitting in the VIP section." Rachel chuckled, leaning over to give me a quick kiss on the cheek. Her friends had already started ordering, and the conversation was buzzing around us. I tried to stay engaged, but I couldn't help but notice how often Rachel glanced at her phone, checking messages or notifications. Each time she did, her smile grew wider, her eyes more animated, as if she was waiting for something. Then, as the appetizers arrived, the atmosphere shifted in a way I wasn't prepared for. Rachel stood up suddenly, her voice rising above the table chatter. "I think it's time we had a little talk," she said, her tone taking on a dramatic flair. Everyone quieted, turning their attention to her. I glanced around at the faces of her friends, all of them watching intently, waiting for the next move in whatever performance Rachel had planned. My heart rate quickened. I felt the familiar pressure in my chest, the one that came when I knew something was about to go wrong, but I couldn't figure out what to do about it. Rachel turned toward me, her expression shifting to one that seemed almost serious, though her eyes glinted with mischief. "Alex, I think it's time we need to talk about our relationship." The room went silent. I could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on me. They were expecting a reaction, something dramatic, something that would give them the drama they craved. I could feel it in the air, thick and palpable, like they were all waiting for me to fall into the trap Rachel had set. I took a slow breath, trying to maintain control. "What do you mean, Rachel?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, though I could feel the tightness in my throat. Rachel's smile faltered just slightly, but she recovered quickly. "I mean, Alex," she said, her voice rising for effect, "I think we need to take a break. Maybe, for a little while. I just don't know if we're right for each other anymore." I watched her for a moment, wondering if I had heard her correctly. This was it. The stunt she had planned for the last few days, the prank she had been plotting with Megan and her friends. The moment she said it, a wave of disbelief washed over me. Rachel had done this. No, we had done this countless times before, but never in front of so many people, never with such an obvious intent to create a scene. The table was silent, the tension hanging in the air like an unspoken question. Everyone's eyes were on me now, waiting for me to react. They expected me to argue, to yell, to beg her to take it back. They expected something big, something that would make it worth the spectacle. But I wasn't going to give them that. Instead, I looked Rachel in the eye, my expression unreadable. My hands were clenched into fists under the table, but I kept my voice calm. "If that's what you want," I said, my voice icy, "then I guess that's what we'll do." Rachel's eyes flickered, a moment of surprise flashing across her face. She hadn't expected me to be so composed. The room felt like it had frozen. The tension was almost unbearable. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to play along with her little show. Without another word, I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Every eye in the room followed my movements, the room holding its breath. I didn't look back at Rachel or her friends as I turned and walked toward the door. I didn't care what they thought. I didn't care about any of it. I was done. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a slap to the face. My mind was racing, but I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't going to let Rachel's game drag me down. Not this time. As I stood there in the parking lot, I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I needed to get away, to clear my head. The next day, I woke up early, my mind still reeling from the events of last night. I had barely slept, restless thoughts chasing each other in a loop. Rachel's face kept popping into my mind, her words echoing in my ears. I could still feel the weight of the room on me, the suffocating expectation, the silence that had followed her declaration. I hadn't heard from her yet, but I knew it wouldn't take long. Rachel couldn't stand being ignored. I knew she would reach out. She always did, no matter how bad things got between us. She hated the silence, the lack of attention. And now, I had given her exactly that. Sure enough, as I sipped my coffee and tried to focus on something else, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from Rachel. "Alex, please call me. I know I messed up. Let's talk." I stared at the screen for a few moments, feeling a strange mix of anger and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. Disappointment, maybe. Part of me wanted to tell her off, to let her know exactly how much I had been hurt by her stunt. But another part of me, the part that had tried to make our marriage work for so long, just felt tired. I took a deep breath and typed my response, my fingers moving slowly over the keyboard. "I know everything, Rachel. I heard you last night." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. I didn't need to explain myself further. There was nothing more to say. Moments later, my phone buzzed again. Rachel's response came almost immediately. I didn't mean for it to go that far. It was supposed to be a joke. Just a little prank for social media. I never thought you'd react like that. Please, just give me a chance to explain. I stared at her message, my fingers hovering over the screen. How could she still not get it? It wasn't about a stupid prank or some misguided attempt at getting attention. It was about respect. Trust. And I was realizing that I didn't have any of that left with her. Instead of replying right away, I put the phone down. I needed some space to think. The events of the night before kept replaying in my mind. The way Rachel had set it all up, how she'd orchestrated this little performance for everyone to watch, the way she tried to manipulate the situation to make herself the star of the show, no matter the cost. I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was clear now that Rachel didn't care about our relationship the way I did. To her, it was just another story to tell, another post to share. Another opportunity to be admired and adored by strangers online. It wasn't real, it wasn't genuine, and I had no interest in being part of that world. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of indecision and frustration. I kept glancing at my phone, wondering whether I should respond. The rational part of me knew there was no point in dragging this out. I had to make a decision. Finally, around noon, I picked up my phone again. "I'm filing for divorce," I typed, my fingers moving quickly this time. "I can't do this anymore." It was the hardest message I had ever sent, but it was also the clearest. There was no going back from this. Not after everything she'd done. I sat back, staring at the screen for a few moments, before hitting send. It was done. I spent the rest of the day trying to stay busy, focusing on work and keeping my mind occupied. I knew Rachel would probably try to reach out again, maybe show up at my apartment or call me 100 times, but I was done. I wasn't going to get sucked into another round of her games. That evening, my phone buzzed again. It was a call from Rachel. I let it go to voicemail. Later, a text came through. "Alex, please don't do this. I'm sorry. I really am. I'll make it up to you. Just give me one more chance." I stared at the screen. I felt the temptation to respond, to explain everything to her, to get into a back and forth that would likely go nowhere. But I resisted. It was over. I knew that now. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Rachel had turned our relationship into a performance for her followers. She wanted drama, attention, and validation. But I didn't need to be a part of that anymore. I deserved more than that. I deserved something real, something that didn't require a stage. The following morning was quiet. There was no message, no call from Rachel. It almost felt too peaceful. Part of me expected her to show up at my door, to apologize in person, or to beg for a second chance. But she didn't. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of relief. I spent the day moving through my routine, But everything felt different now. I kept reminding myself that I had made the right choice. The moment I had hit send on that text message, I had drawn a line in the sand. There was no going back, no more drama, no more pretending that things were okay when they were clearly not. Rachel had created her own mess, and it was time for her to face the consequences. I couldn't keep trying to patch things up when the foundation was cracked. It had taken me years to finally realize it, but I knew now I didn't want a relationship built on manipulation and performance. I didn't need that kind of chaos in my life. Around noon, I received a call from my lawyer. It was time to start the paperwork for the divorce. I had already made the decision, and now it was just about making it official. There was no more waiting, no more deliberating. The conversation was straightforward, even efficient. I felt detached from it all, almost numb, but there was a part of me that felt strangely empowered. Later that afternoon, as I was sitting in my living room, I received another text from Rachel. "Alex, I know you're angry. But I didn't mean to hurt you. Please let me explain. This isn't who I am. You know that." I read the message but didn't respond. I didn't need to explain myself again. I didn't owe her any more of my time or energy. She had made her choices, and now I was making mine. The doorbell rang a little while later, and my heart skipped when I saw who it was. Rachel stood on the other side of the door, her face a mixture of frustration and desperation. She looked different from the confident woman I had known, the woman who thrived on attention and validation. Now she looked vulnerable, like someone who had realized the consequences of her actions too late. "I need to talk to you," she said softly, her voice cracking slightly. I didn't move to open the door wider. Instead, I stood there looking at her, trying to stay composed. "I don't think there's anything left to say, Rachel." Her eyes widened, and she stepped forward, trying to push past me. "Please just hear me out. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I didn't think it would come to this. It was just a joke. I didn't want to ruin everything." I shook my head. "It's not about the prank, Rachel. It's about the fact that you've been using our relationship for attention. I'm not a part of that anymore." Her expression faltered, and for a brief moment, I saw a flash of regret in her eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by the same pleading look that I had seen so many times before. She wanted me to feel guilty for not giving her a second chance. She wanted me to forgive her for the sake of us, for the sake of the life we had built together. But I couldn't. Not this time. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible now. "I was just trying to get a little attention. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't mean for things to fall apart." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Rachel, you can't keep making excuses. You chose this. And I've chosen something else." I stood firm, holding my ground. "I'm done with the games. I've already filed for the divorce." For a long moment, she stood there, her face unreadable. Then, with a heavy sigh, she backed away from the door. "I guess I deserve that," she said, almost to herself. Her voice was quiet, resigned. "I messed everything up." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I watched her turn and walk down the steps, her figure growing smaller with each step. Part of me wanted to go after her, to explain, to make her understand just how hurt I had been. But the other part of me knew it was futile. There was no point in trying to fix something that had already broken beyond repair. As I closed the door, I stood there for a long while, the silence of my apartment finally settling around me. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for months, maybe even years, seemed to lift just a little. I had made the right decision. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't painless, but it was right. And now I could finally move on.